Our names are Steph, Angelica, and Rachel, and we chose to research poverty and its impact in the classroom. Imagine you are a student that comes from a low socioeconomic background. What do you think your educational experience would look like? What we chose to look at for the focus of poverty's history was looking into No Child Left Behind. No Child Left Behind was signed into law by President Bush in 2002, and it increased accountability between the federal government and schools' progress. According to No Child Left Behind, an overview, states didn't have to comply with the law of reporting progress results to the government, but they risked the potential of losing Title I funding. There was a specific focus on the performance of certain groups of students, such as ESLs, special education, and minority/poor children who were considered to be academically behind their peers. But this issue of poverty includes many more parties than the students. Let's examine the students, teachers, and families and their perspectives. Students in poverty that are being served can often lack control over emotions, attention span, and don't have any sense of routine. This is due to any distress they face in their home lives. Teachers need to realize that these students have limited resources, but should continue to maintain a high academic expectation, connect with the families, and see them as partners of education. The perspective of families can differ, but it is vital to think about how some families may feel hesitancy to be around schools based on their experiences and the pressures of stereotypes others may place on them, like hobos or lazy.
When looking at poverty, there are many things that come to mind, but many times the outlook on poverty is something that is negative, unless of course you look at the business perspective. The business perspective finds multiple advantages to having a lower class. These include everything from having a scapegoat in times of trouble to doing the dirty work and buying the goods that the higher classes don't want. Of course, this doesn't mean that poverty is a good thing for our students. There are many factors associated with poverty that affect students within the class. One of them is an increased exposure to toxins. The book Poverty in Education: Finding the Way Forward found that 10% of students in poverty live around someone who smokes as opposed to 3% for other students. The book also stated that 21% of students in poverty have higher levels of lead in their system as opposed to 10% for other students. They also reported that students who are read to at night do better in school, and students living in poverty are often not read to at night. Also, students in poverty could be facing other things such as homelessness, hunger, and bad hygiene, which could lead to more absences and sickness.
According to Eric Jensen, the author of How Poverty Affects the Classroom Engagement, there are 7 main areas that poverty affects students in the classroom. These include health and nutrition, vocabulary, effort, hope and mindset, cognition, relationships, and distress. People that are poor are less likely to get adequate exercise and medical care. Children from lower socioeconomic backgrounds often eat foods with little to no nutritional value. This makes it harder for students to listen, concentrate, and learn. Children who grow up in low-income homes have a smaller vocabulary than their more affluent peers. These children hear half the amount of words by the age of 4 than middle-class children, and a third of the amount as children from an upper-class family. This causes a problem for these children in school because they have a hard time understanding the words that the teacher uses in class or the material that they are required to read. This leads them to not wanting to read, tuning out, and feeling that school is not for them. Students from low-income families often seem unmotivated and don't put any effort into their schoolwork. This is because of lack of hope and optimism that comes with their socioeconomic status. Having financial hardships generally correlate with depressive symptoms. Poverty also affects a student's hope and mindset. Lower expectations about the future often is associated with being poor. Students that are in lower socioeconomic conditions view the future as having more negative events rather than positive ones. These students perform lower in academics than their middle-class peers. They also show cognitive problems such as short attention spans and difficulty monitoring the quality of their work, making school harder for them, which leads these students to shut down or act out. Students from families on welfare often come from homes that lack emotional support or a literate environment. Some of these families also do not understand or value formal education. This then leads to children being unprepared for the school environment. Students that are from low socioeconomic backgrounds may have early chaotic experiences, which leads them to become insecure and mistrusting. If an adult at home failed them, they assume that the adults at school will do the same. These students often become impulsive and disrespectful because they lack a positive role model. These students' relationships with their peers may also be impacted. Coming from a poor background, bullying may occur due to their appearance or their behavior. Chronic stress is more prevalent in students that come from poverty-stricken environments. This can affect brain development, social competence, and academic success. Students that deal with this can often show two behaviors, aggressive and passive. Aggressive behavior includes talking back to the teacher, while passive behavior includes not responding to questions or requests and disconnecting from peers. The importance of this issue revolves around the achievement gap. The gap has been steadily growing between poor children and their more affluent peers. There has been a push to close the gap, but many argue that the gap cannot be eliminated without addressing income inequality and poverty. No Child Left Behind listed closing the achievement gap between low socioeconomic children and their more well-off peers as one of the goals of the act, yet this gap is still a critical issue. A quote by Katie Haycock states that, "Some say we can't fix education until we fix poverty. It's exactly the opposite. We can't fix poverty until we fix education." Poverty is still a growing issue in the United States, and it continues to grow. As of 2014, 21% of all children in the United States lived in poverty. That is 33% of all people living in poverty.
At the moment, the percent of single parents in the U.S. is 32% and rising. The percent of single parents in poverty is higher than those in two-parent households, so poverty will become more prevalent in the future when we're teachers. Thankfully, we have started to use more programs to mitigate the effects of poverty in schools, such as CAPRA, SEEK, and CD, that have shown success at getting more students who live in poverty to get a higher education. One of the things that we should start doing in classrooms to help students in poverty is to look at their non-academic strengths, which will help build skills such as engagement and persistence. Poverty is a comparison of wealth, so unless we live in a properly working socialist or communist society, there will always be poverty. Our role as educators is to minimize the effects of poverty in the classroom.